Good morning, Greene County. Welcome to the financial huddle of the month here. I'm your host. We won't even go there. So, last month when we talked, we kind of revisited the great game of business. So I'm going to try and keep these in kind of the same terms. So the first part of it's know and teach the rules with financial transparency and education. And of course, that's just talking about the scoreboard and asking questions. And that's why we're here, is to talk and ask questions. High involvement planning, that's the budget. And we're going to be talking about the budget at the end of this presentation. And then we have our critical number, which our critical number has been general revenue cash balance. When we did the 2017 tax initiative that the voters passed for us, we put together a 20-year plan so that we could take care of the items that we promised the voters, and we could make sure that we had the cash on hand to take care of our bond payments. And so even though we have collapsed GR2 as a separate fund into GR1 now, we still are monitoring those cash balances to make sure that we take care of what we promised the citizens and that we can pay our bonds. And so because of that, we have our cash plan, and at the end of 2024, our cash ending balance by plan should be about $25,476,000. So the next part of the great game is follow the action, keep the score, and the first part of that's keeping score. So let's get to it. So with Road and Bridge Fund, we are now with Road and Bridge about $5,897,000 better through August 20th, or through July 31st, than what we thought our normalized budget would be. Or our normalized figures are that much better than budget to date. So about $5,896,000. And as you can see, we had a tick up in cash balance yet again with Road and Bridge. Basically, we're still waiting for that spending on bridges, roads, and materials to catch up to the normalized balance, to where that's not being normalized anymore, that it's becoming the actual. So this is all just a very positive sign for the health of the fund. But of course, there's the concern is the work getting done that we want to get done. So let's run up to the next one. This is our assessment fund. And when we look at the assessment fund, we're about $26,000, less than $26,000 behind budget to date. So that's so close. That's less than 1/2% of budget off. In other words, this is the fund that is performing the closest to budget, what's anticipated. So we're expecting the green line to slowly work its way down to the blue. However, we are expecting a jump in the green line at one point coming in here when the state of Missouri actually reimburses us for operating expenses that they do, which they end up doing that about third and fourth quarter. So we anticipate seeing a jump in that green line before we start seeing it trend down and reach blue and come close to budget. That takes us to law enforcement sales tax. This is a pretty fun chart to always look at. The green line, the actual line, is always below black and blue because we have a budgeted year-end transfer to make up the difference. So with green being that far below, it's not a concern because we know there will be a transfer at the end of the year. However, the blue line, the normalized budget, is actually doing better than the black line, which is the budget to date, by about $114,000. So that's a very good sign for LEST. You'll notice that in our budget, we actually showed the difference from June going to July as being a positive increase on the black line, the budget to date. But on the green line, the actual, we saw an actual bigger dip in actual cash balance. And that's because we ended up paying our workers' comp, which is an annual expense, in July instead of when we were anticipating August. The other big part of August, of course, is going to be the 3 paychecks hit the finances in August. And so that's why we see that big dip there, workers' comp and 3 paychecks. But we're actually doing pretty good here, $114,000 better than budget. That takes us to general revenue, which has been our critical number that we monitor. And what we see here, the green line, actual cash, stayed fairly level. It actually dipped about $60,000. We had anticipated that green line coming down about the same angle that it had been coming down and getting very close to the blue line. Well, it did end up being close to the blue line, but the blue line came up to meet it. And the reason behind this is Justin. It's his fault. He's hiding back there. I can see him hiding behind Bob. But no, actually what happened is workers' comp, of course, we just talked about. Workers' comp is in the normalized budget figures, but it's not in the green line. So you would have expected the green line to come down, but it didn't because we had surprise revenue that we didn't expect. And so that revenue offset the workers' comp, and the green line came up, and the blue line that didn't have the surprise revenue in it ended up having to come up. And so instead of our green and blue lines meeting down here, they met up here. And that surprise revenue, Justin, you care to speak up? Oh, opioid. I put him on the spot. We had some opioid settlement money come in July. Actually, quite a bit, more than expected. And so that surprise revenue, put it like that. But when we look at this, the normalized budget is still about $1,980,000 better than budget to date. That's a very good sign for how we're operating this year. So let's talk about budget. How do these numbers roll up, and what does that mean? So I've got the past few years sitting here, and in 2021, you'll see this first section down at the total line of the first section. You've got in 2021 a total of $35,922,000. Those are our actual cash accounts in general revenue. In this case, 1 and 2 added together. And then the budget office likes to look at some cash equivalents. And so we have our due to and due from funds, which those are temporary timing loans where general revenue might take care of something while we're waiting for a reimbursement revenue to come in. And so we go ahead and we don't count that against GR. We work that back in. And a lot of times it's actually revenue from within the county in just another fund like our ARPA funds. So we go ahead and we add those due to, due froms back. And then we have an ARPA receivable here that we count. We've spent the money out of GR, but we're going to be reimbursed. And then our outstanding warrants are actually the checks that we've written that haven't cleared the bank yet, but we know we have those expenses, so we're going to go ahead and subtract those out of cash. So in 2021, we had ending cash of $40,134,000. We needed to have at least $33,936,000. So we had a nice, comfortable cushion. In 2022, our ending cash value was $37,316,000, and we needed to have $30,991,000. You'll notice, we dropped about $3 million in the cash need that we needed to have. We've built in some decline in cash up through 2031 in order to take care of some things. So in 2023, we don't have our finalized books yet, but our ending cash value on Eden is $28,792,000. And we're supposed to have $28,926,000. So we're off, and we're actually below by just a little bit. However, there are still some transactions that are supposed to happen to finalize the 2023 books, which include some transfers from funds. So like Road and Bridge typically gives GR $106,050 a year for services that GR performs for them. So we're expecting some of those transfers to still happen. And when that occurs, then this number should be slightly higher than ending cash plan, which means we've budgeted the way we were supposed to. However, we're used to, in past years, having significant savings from what we budgeted. This year, we just don't think in 2023, we don't think we were going to have significant savings from what we budgeted. Although when we did the 2024 budget, we kind of anticipated that we would. And so when we did the 2024 budget, we had a beginning cash value for 2024 that ended up being higher than what this current cash value is indicating. And so when we did our 2024 budget, we not only spent down the planned amount of spend down, but the excess cash that we thought we had. Now we don't have a final 2023 budget yet, so we haven't compared what we thought we were going to have to what we're going to actually end up. But when we have that final number, we'll be able to do that comparison and see why beginning cash was not as high as we anticipated. But let's look at 2024. So if you put in that 2024 beginning cash balance that we currently show on Eden's books instead of the higher one when we did the budget, and then our budgeted change, we actually had budgeted change of about $5.5 million. So commission had the comfort level to spend about $5.5 million more than what we thought our revenues were going to be in 2024. And then taking into account the adjustments that we know we have so far, sales tax is not performing as good as we thought. So with GR1 and GR2, that 3/4 worth of sales tax, that's about an $801,000 decline in cash from what we thought we would have in budget in 2024. And then federal boarding, about $1,452,840. Now these are just taking figures through July. We know that boarding has picked up, and we know that sales tax has kind of picked up. So we believe by the end of the year, these reductions will be smaller. And then vacancy to date through July 31st is about $1.7 million. And then our operational savings that we've seen are about $620,000. So net through August 12th, we're about $60,000 to the good compared to our $5,500,000 spend down. Not much, but it's a lot better than being negative, especially with the problems that we've seen with revenues. However, we expect sales tax, federal boarding, vacancy to all improve. And what we'll do with the budget is, before the recommended budget, November 15th, we'll take hard estimates at not only where we are at November 15th, but where we think we'll be at the end of the year. It's just a little reckless for us to do it at this stage in August. And so we want to make sure that we present factually what we know. And then in November, it's going to be what we believe. So right now, and then we have unbudgeted revenue that we are fairly certain will happen by the end of this year of about $1.75 million. And that's from the sale of an asset that we can't really talk about at this point, unless commission feels like we can. And then, so that makes the total change for 2024, $3,693,000 compared to the $5.5 million that we thought we would have. However, that brings our cash ending 2024 cash balance to $25,098,000. And of course, our plan has $25,476,000. So our cash plan is actually, we're shy about $379,000 from where we thought we would begin 2025 by plan. And of course, there's transfers at the end of the year for not only 2023, but 2024. And we have improvement that we'll see in these numbers. So I don't think we're going to end up behind. But when we look at our numbers right now, we're behind. The beginning balance, then if we take that over to 2025, we don't know what our budget's going to be yet for 2025, but we know that the cash plan need at the end of 2024 is $23,793,000. So our planned spend down before was about $1,682,000. And right now that cash spend down is about $1,304,000. So it's kind of hard to go from a cash spend down of $5.5 million, or actually doing a cash spend down of about $3.6 million, to having a new budget where that cash spend down is going to be $1,304,000. However, we do have growth in some revenues and other things, but we also have growth in a lot of expenses. So it's going to make this budget a little bit tighter than past budgets. And that's why we do what we do with the Great Game, is to get input from you guys. Because that second thing that we're talking about is we want to get everybody involved in the budgeting process. And part of that involvement is letting us know that when we make our November adjustments, that if there's spending that you have in your departments or offices that aren't going to happen, that you don't assume that we're going to figure that out. So if you see savings somewhere, let the budget office know. And that way, when we're factoring in that cash balance, our beginning figure will end up being more accurate, and it will give commission more room to make decisions, because that's what's important. And I think, as you guys can know, commission has always been aware of the employees. The last part of the Great Game is provide a stake in the outcome, rewards, and recognition. And so for us, when we look at a history of what our current commission has been able to do, back in 2021, we had a 1% COLA and a 1-year mid-step, which that mid-year step is typically 1.5%. And that's the standard thing that we tried to promise employees, and we built into the plan, at least that. And that's what the budget office puts in our requested budgets when we send out our personnel summaries to you guys. In 2021, that's what we had to work with. In 2022, commission looked at the history of compensation and looked at the marketplace, and they gave us a 3% COLA, 3%, and 3 steps, 4.5% at the beginning of the year, besides a step at mid-year. So a gigantic change from what we had experienced in the past. And in 2023, they were able to use the cash balances that were made available and prioritize employees and do a 5% COLA and a 1 mid-year step for qualifying employees. And then in 2024, again, they did a 4.5% COLA, making sure that they were keeping up with inflationary pressures that were showing in the marketplace, and a mid-year step. So what we need is a lot of help in determining our cash balances to give commission the room to continue to make employees a priority. And I guarantee you, they're going to do the best they can for employees with our situation. So for the 2025 budget, 1% of benefit COLA at the beginning of the year is expected to cost about $712,000 for general revenue and LEST. We're factoring LEST in this because we end up having to do an end-of-year transfer to cover the LEST balance. So that's why we're putting that there. For each step, not 1%, 1.5%, but for each step at mid-year, it's expected to cost about $240,000 for general revenue and LEST. So a total of just what the requested budget holds is about $952,212, which, when you look back right now, we're showing an available planned spend down of about $1,304,000. So basically what I'm saying, the county has put a lot of trust in every employee to be financial stewards of the citizens' money. And part of that goes into our budgeting process and helping us determine cash balance, so that commission is going to be able to make employees a focus of what they do in the budget. But that's kind of what I had for you guys today, as far as where we currently are and how this impacts and rolls into budget. Does anybody have any questions that we can talk about? Or if you have observations about your own funds or your own items, please email us and we'll make sure we factor that in. How are we doing on time? Oh, 8:31, look at me go, baby. I'm gonna have to add more slides next week, because you guys don't want to get out early, right? Anybody, any questions or anything you're wondering about? Obviously, this was worst case scenario, just using our numbers to date right now. Like we said, a bunch of our numbers we believe are going to get better by November. And when we estimate the end of December, those numbers will look a little bit better. But I think it's kind of obvious that right now, without additional input, commission isn't going to have the flexibility to do that 4.5%, 5% COLA that we're talking about right now. It's going to be much tighter, and we haven't even seen what kind of requests are going to come in from offices and departments. But I think it's pretty evident in the history, recent history, that commission makes employees a focus. And I want to thank them for that because I'm an employee too. But of course, we all keep in mind, we all keep our eyes on the numbers to make sure that our future is not impaired and that we can do what we promised the citizens with their trust in us and that we can take care of our bonds. So that's really where we are right now. Yes, sir.
Already started that process. We had first statutorily required meeting. Can you share a little bit about how that process went this year? How it goes?
Sure. We
just off kind of what that was like.
We have a very good relationship with the courts, and that's not always been the case. But our current commission and the courts get along extremely well. You can tell that there's a lot of respect that goes both ways with what they are doing and with what commission tries to provide and take care of them. Every August, we have to have a statutory meeting where we confer and discuss with the courts their needs. Unlike everybody else, the courts actually do a court order. And so we end up taking what they order and putting it in the budget. But this chance to meet and confer gives us an opportunity for them to understand where the county is financially and us to anticipate what they're wanting to do. The courts, the circuit court has been extremely good with their budget, and as far as the amount of increase that they ask for is usually very small. I believe we have one new position coming on with courts this time, and some changes that they're bringing on in operations. However, they've also looked at the number of capital cases that they have, and those are going down. And so they're very careful not only to increase for what their expected need is, but they also make sure and look at every line, and when they can decrease something, they decrease it. And so overall, when you look at circuit court, juvenile, and the circuit clerk, I think their increase is about $500,000, $500,000 to $600,000 that they're asking for this year. So it's not ideal for everybody else, but it is actually very conservative with what they're facing and what they're doing. Do you guys care to comment on it at all?
I was impressed, and I have they came to voluntarily cut their budget.
Yeah.
But this year, line have said same last year.
Right.
No change. Same, and there were a few things that were increased. Some of those were things we already anticipated because we have a new judge.
Yeah, I was going to say, we actually have more operations going over there because they have an additional judge.
So really, when you look at it, for the total operation, it's about the same, maybe a little less. Spread it out. It is mutual respect, and realize that they're trying to be very.
And they're doing all this while, like everybody else, we have so much change going on in interrupting our work. And, you know, it's been hard over the historic courthouse, but they have the same amount of change going on in the judicial courts facility and in juvenile. And it's kind of amazing that the impact that change has had on them, that they're able to get the job done and still be as efficient with their budget requests as they have been. Well, with that, everybody, let's not hold you here. We'll thank you all for attending, and I really appreciate you coming to the extra location. And those of you who are online, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we didn't disappoint. Thanks.